Okay.
Coming up in the next Unknown Pleasures screening of films is Bert Dealing's film, Pure Shit. And it's my great pleasure to be speaking to the producer of the film, Bob Weis, and the co-director or co-curator of Unknown Pleasures, as always, Bill Mousoulis. Welcome, Bill and Bob, to Movie Metropolis.
Bill and
Thank you very
Bob.
much.
Hi, Peter.
Now, it's great to see Pure Shit getting attention that it deserves, Bert Dealing's film. And it's such an interesting film made in the same year as Picnic at Hanging Rock, which I found so interesting. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So, Bob, I must ask you, first of all, what led to you producing Bert Dealing's film?
Well, I just made a couple of films myself, and he approached me, and initially it was going to be like a cooperative venture with a script written by people from the Buoyancy Foundation who treated drug addicts, and it was a very open and wonderful process, really, in the beginning.
Okay. And I read that Bert's film, which he wrote and directed, was a complete script, and there was no improvisation on the film.
Which film are you talking about?
Pure shit.
Pure shit.
Absolutely wrong.
There
Ah,
was improvisation.
Yeah, look, I can think of
Yeah.
the Helen Garner Speed Freak thing. I think it was pretty much improvised along the lines of what she might say. And see, some of the actors were actually junkies.
right.
And
Mm.
how do you give them a script and expect them to perform it?
So okay, so
Absolutely. Yep.
yeah. Well, that's interesting because a source that I found on the net, which was it looked like a pretty good source, said that everyone stuck to the script and that it was not improvised. So I'm glad to hear that there was improvisation, and as you quite rightly say, there were non-actors who were
Yeah.
improvising.
Just goes to show, Peter, you shouldn't trust Hines.
Right.
Bad source.
Okay. No, thank you for that. So tell me, how much were you involved in the casting? You've mentioned Helen Garner already, and there've been some other interesting people, Gary Waddell, of course,
Mhm.
and so on. Tell me about your involvement in that process.
Well, it wasn't quite as clear cut as that. I mean, Gary, Anne, um, Motherwell, Shovers, these were contributors to the workshop and the screenplays. Dormouse, who's now passed away. Um, and it was like an organic process rather than a traditional casting process.
Okay.
Bob,
Yep.
you were involved with the Pram Factory at that time, and I
Yes.
think some of those actors you just mentioned were at the Pram Factory as well.
Carol Porter was. Phil was around the Pram Factory, and certainly we
Mm.
put on some of his plays, but I don't think he was ever a member of the Pram Factory, if that's a
What
distinction worth making.
Yeah, what were you doing there? You weren't acting yourself there. Were you helping the organization and producing some plays, or what was your role there?
A little bit of that. I made videotapes of pretty much all the productions that were on while I was there.
Mm.
Okay. Interesting to hear that. And I just wanted to add, of course, Max Gillies is in the film, Jane Clifton. I mean,
Yeah,
it's an interesting cast, and
yeah.
yeah, you would have had some personal connections with them all, I suppose.
And still do. I had dinner with Jane the other night.
Ah.
Mm. Nice.
Well, can I ask you, how did Jane respond to this special screening of Pure Shit?
It hasn't happened yet.
No, but how did she feel about it happening?
Oh, me? Yeah,
Eh,
I'm quite excited about it, and I'm hoping a new generation of film goers will get to see it and be excited with it too.
Okay, so tell me, Bob, how much involvement did you have with Bert about how he was shooting the film and how it was progressing, and how much advice did you give him?
Bert was a very hard man to give advice to. You had to give him advice so that he thought it was his idea. I'll give you one example of that. Um, we, you know, the chemist bust scene?
Yep.
Yeah, that was shot at Queen Vic Markets at an actual chemist, and the chemist was a mate of mine, and we shot it over 2 nights. On the first night, we saw one of our guys on the roof and pulling up the tin, and the second night was a week later, and he'd actually been involved in a real chemist bust and was on the run from the police. So Bert said to me, "Where is he?" I told him what had happened. He said, "Well, this is your fault." I looked around and he was talking to me. And I said to him, "Listen, Bert, it's no big deal. Look, what you do, he's not one of the main characters, right?" He said, "Yes." I said, "We've seen him on top of the roof, pulling the tin off and jumping down, right?" He
Hmm.
said, "Yes." I said, "We just use a double and see somebody go very quickly through a frame, dressed in the same clothes. And then we cut to our main people doing the chemist bust." Weisey said, "That'll never work. That's not going to work in a film that I'm making." I'll come back to it in a minute. I'll think about it. So he came back to me about 5 minutes later. He said, "I know what we'll do." I said, "What?" He said, "We've seen the guy on the roof, yeah? And he's lifting up the tin and jumping out. So we can use anybody for the flash through, and then we're with our main characters. That's what's going to work, not your stupid idea." And
He
I said, "You're
repeated the
absolutely
idea.
right. I think that's right. I mean, sorry, I came up with nonsense, but you've solved it."
Oh, well, very interesting to hear all that. And speaking of locations, did you
Yeah.
were they difficult to find spots to be able to make the film?
No, not really. I think the car was a big location, and I ended up with that, the FJ Holden. One, two, three, I think 4 or 5 of the other locations were owned by friends of mine. Um, and I was trying to think which ones. The sort of downbeat place on Greville Street was owned by a friend who later later developed it. Anyway, yeah. No, I don't think locations weren't that difficult to find.
Okay. And when I
We
was
had no money, of course.
okay. And when I was rewatching the film, I noticed there was real drug injection
Yeah,
happening.
yeah.
Um, was that with the consent, obviously, of everyone concerned?
Well, it depends who you mean. With the so-called actors, definitely. I'll give you a little anecdote.
Yep.
I went to pick up Motherwell one day for the shooting, or one late afternoon, and he lived in a shared house in Fitzroy. And I said, "Is Phil here?" And they said, "Oh, we'll go and get him." And he walked down the stairs like he just got out of bed, which he had, in fact, just done. And he rolled up his sleeve and said, "Hold this, man." That was his arm. And then he spent time looking for a vein.
Oh, goodness.
That's in place of coffee. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Except it's got the opposite effect.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my goodness, it must have been a really interesting shoot in many respects. Um, and the film, I gather, was banned at one stage. How did you respond and cope with that?
Oh, we weren't allowed to call it pure shit, as you know, and we
Yeah.
ended up calling it pure S dot dot dot. I think it was Andrew Mackay, the Herald
Hmm.
uh, Pure, who called
Yep.
it the most evil film he'd ever seen. And I said to Bert, we have to put that on the poster. And we actually opened the film with that tagline. In
Uh,
fact, I just got a few months, maybe a year ago, Bob Daley sent me the poster that he made, and it has that line on it.
uh,
Mm.
it's a great line. And
Yeah,
the irony is the film received, I think, four AFI nominations in
right.
1976. So,
Yeah.
and it is quite an amazing film. So I wonder if some critics pulled their head in and changed their mind.
I'd imagine so. What did you think of it when it came out?
Oh, look, I thought it was incredible to see an Australian film that dealt with real underground culture like that,
Mm, mm.
especially as a contrast to our mainstream films like Picnic at Hanging Rock and so on. I think it was a revelation, and it
Yeah,
made
and
it.
it was definitely a film of its time.
Mm,
You see, we, the filmmakers, honestly believed that criminalizing drugs was a road to nowhere. In America, 90% of people in prisons are drug users, and the cost to the society and the cost to the individuals is just enormous.
yes,
And what they learn in prison, of course, is how to be real criminals.
Mm.
yeah. Did the film, Bob, have much traction internationally?
Um, Let me just think back. I was doing the distribution of it, and it certainly went to a lot of European and eventually American markets, but not to cinema,
Ah,
pretty much straight to VHS. And then
okay.
eventually I assumed to cable.
Uh-huh.
What was it in any film festivals overseas?
Yeah, yeah,
It was.
yeah. I think
No,
Toronto had it.
okay.
Uh,
Look, I'd have to go back through what's left of my mind.
Mm, mm,
Okay, but can I ask you about the film has been restored
Mhm.
in an excellent DVD sort of package.
Right. Yeah.
Um, I gather you
But
were
beyond me,
instrumental in that.
beyond Neil Foley, I think was from Beyond, and we talked it through, and we actually had a DVD release and Q&A session and so on. It was a couple of years ago. It was really, really good.
2009. Yeah. Mm.
9,
2009, the DVD release was.
wow. To me, it
15
felt,
years ago. 15.
oh,
Wow.
that's astonishing. To me, it felt like it was, as I said, a couple of years ago.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Look, it's great that it's getting a good screening at Unknown Pleasures. Bill, tell me
Hmm.
more about your interest in the film and selecting it for Unknown Pleasures.
Well, I think selecting it for Unknown Pleasures is a bit of a no-brainer, even though it's not necessarily, as unknown as
Hmm.
some of the other films we've put on. It's of course notoriously known or unknown or unseen or whatever. Although I think, that will change with time. I mean, I myself, I think I first saw it like in the mid late 80s, and I think some commentators say that, it was really hard to see from 1975 until 2009 when the DVD release was on. But it wasn't like I saw it a number of times in the 80s and 90s and early zeros, maybe about four times. I think the Melbourne Cinematheque played it, and I think it got a couple of other one-off screenings because there was a 16 mil print in the archive or the
Mhm.
National Film Landing Collection.
Yeah.
And I myself, yeah, I just loved its energy from the beginning, even though the first screening might have been a little perplexing, like it is with a lot of people when they see it, especially as a youngster in my mid-20s or whatever. And I think now, of course, the film has just gained incredible symbolic or emblematic kind of meaning and presence or whatever you want to call it. because of that year it was made. And because it was like, one end, like one fork where Australian cinema could have gone down, the real kind of indie, grungy kind of way. And then there was Picnic at Hanging Rock. And then there were all these, bawdy comedies, Alvin Purple and
Yeah.
things. And Australia could have gone down that road as well. But in the end, it just chose the middle ground, the middle brow kind of road. And yeah, there were other films at the time, like Yakety Yak by Dave Jones, and
Mhm.
I mean there was Bert's first film, Dalmas. Uh, there were films by Nigel Buist, a few other people like that, and there was a kind of groundswell of these kind of indie films happening. But of course, Australia wasn't ready for anything like that. I kind of compare it to America, where America already had its Hollywood kind of system established. So when those movie brats, I think they were called, Scorsese, Spielberg, all those guys, when they came along, and when Scorsese came along with Mean Streets in 1973, it was like it wasn't rejected. It was like, wow, American cinema can transform. But Australian cinema didn't have that established kind of system in place. So yeah, Pure Shit is a bit like a Mean Streets, similar
What
kind
the
of
American
energy.
system, sorry, Bill, what the American system couldn't do until the writers' strike really was embrace foreign film. And they would buy the remake rights so that they could make a good film
Yeah.
into, you know, in fact, I had a conversation once with a lawyer I guess he was from New York, and this was to do a remake of David Stevens' The Clinic,
All
and
right.
he had a clause in the contract which said, "We are buying the remake rights, the future rights throughout the world and throughout the universe." And I wrote back to him and said, "Is that the known universe or future unknown universes?" And he stopped talking to me.
And you were the producer of that film too, The Clinic. I did
Yeah,
see that in cinemas
yeah.
Yes.
in 1985 or whenever it was, and yeah,
We made it 82.
82.
Yeah.
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 So
Huh,
a
I
lot
did.
of the people you're talking about, by the way, have passed away now. David Stevens is gone, Bert Deling is gone.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
a lot of the actors in Pure Shit have died from overdoses and so on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is sad. And
Mm.
and it's interesting that Bert Dealing hardly did any interviews. He didn't talk much to press or whatever. And yes, he died at the age of 80 in 2022, which is very sad. I must ask you, Bob, about technical issues. I mean, the cinematography is so good from Tom Cowan, and the
Hmm.
music by Martin Armiger. Did you deliberately select these people?
Bert selected Tom,
Ah,
and I think I selected Martin. And it wasn't just Martin, it was a whole range of bands that used to perform at the Pram Factory.
ah, okay.
Mm.
So,
But
so
the
you
soundtrack was like a driving force.
a driving force. So you really
Mm.
oversaw so much of the production of the film. You were really hands-on, I gather, for the way the film was shot.
Well, yes and no. I mean, certainly what I took away from it was that as a producer, and particularly if I initiated a project, I often worked on the script, was either a co-writer or the script editor. I had the last say in casting, much to the chagrin of at least one director I can think of.
Mm.
And I mean, with Pure S, I oversaw the first cut, but it was nowhere to be seen.
All
Uh-huh.
right.
In fact, when you say with the first cut, was there much editing? Was there much of a process in getting the final film sorted out?
You mean from the first to the final?
Yes.
Some refinements, but no, I think the first cut was pretty easy to do. John Scott was a really ace editor, um, and we had a lot of fun with it. But no, I don't think there was that much from that to the final thing, other than layering and layering of the soundtrack.
Uh-huh. A- And at the
Mm.
time, the film was first released in
Mhm.
'75 when it was when it got out of its censorship and so on. Did you find that
Yeah.
there were cinema chains or cinemas that rejected the film, didn't want to screen it?
Oh yeah, we've. I've got a feeling. I've got to go back and think about this. I think we put it on ourselves at the Play Box in
Yes.
Russell Street.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, has the film helped your filmography, Bob, or has it hindered it? I'm just wondering about that.
I don't think either really. I went on a completely different path
Oh, we can't
after
hear you.
the film. Sorry.
Uh,
Oh, you might be cutting out. No?
Ah,
Say again, Bob.
yeah. Peter, I don't think it either
oh,
helped
sorry.
or
It's all
hurt
right.
my
It's my fault.
filmography.
Keep going.
Um, I went on a different path after that. I went into a video access centre in Melbourne, then built a broadcast studio and made some children's TV, and then did Women of the Sun in '79, I guess.
Uh,
So, and then just did a string of things from there.
right. So you've really have a diverse filmography. You've done produced so many and directed so many different types of productions. So do
Mm.
you have a guiding principle about how you decide what you make?
Pretty much, I get asked this by film students a lot, and I say there are two things that are important to me, that I'm passionate about the film and that it can make a difference.
Okay.
And,
Mm.
you know, and probably a third is that if it's something that nobody else would make.
All right.
Mm. Mm.
And just on that, did Pure Shit sort of change people's attitudes that you noticed about drug taking and about how that should be sort of recognized in the community and so on?
I don't think so at the time, but I think with time, it created a platform to discuss those issues.
Uh-huh.
Mm. Mm.
We don't make enough films about issues, about politics, about social situations, and I'm so glad that Pure Shit came along. So well done on that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, yeah. So on April 15th, the film will be screening as part of Unknown
Mhm.
Pleasures. Will you be there, Bob, for the screening?
I certainly will. That's next Tuesday,
Yeah.
Bill, correct? Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Oh, yeah. No, that'll be fantastic having Bob there.
Mm,
Bert died just a couple of years ago, but even before that, he was, I guess Bob would know, he was a bit of a recluse. I think he lived out in country Victoria somewhere, and I'm
Mhm.
not sure if he was interested in his last years to talk about pure shit or his career. His career ended when he was just 40 years of age
Yeah,
with his third feature called Dead Easy.
dead
yep,
easy. Yeah.
yep.
So, which is actually quite a fine film. It's very stylish and very fast, a bit like pure shit. I don't know. So, what was his attitude like in his last years, Bob? Like, did he did he feel proud that he'd made it? Obviously, with the 2009 video release, there was a real kind of buzz about the film and the release. But after that, in his older age, as it were,
Hmm. No, look, in 2009, he asked me to do the Q&A, and I said, well, why don't you join in? He said, I, I, I don't remember a lot.
wow. Mm,
And after he died, I talked to his widow, Helen Hooper, and said, "What was all that about?" And she said, "He had prostate cancer, and the drugs,
At the time. Wow,
yeah,
in '09.
yeah,
Wow.
and the drugs just took his memory away."
Mm.
All right. Mm,
How sad. Very sad to hear that. I noticed with the DVD there are lots of extras
Mhm.
in the
mm.
in it, which is excellent to see. Were you involved or responsible for making sure all of that was in the DVD restoration?
Probably not. I don't think. I might have directed Neil to where some of that stuff was,
Mm,
but I've moved maybe 4 or 5 times in the last 15 years, and I sent most of my archives to the National Archive.
Ah,
And now when
mm,
people say, have you got a trailer for this or a print of that, I say just go to the National Archive and I'll give you
mm.
permission to access it if it's suitable.
right.
The box set is really tremendous. Like the person Bob mentions, Neil Foley,
Mm.
he he organized a whole bunch of new interviews with people like John Flaus and Richard Lowenstein and John Hewitt and there was a reunion of some of the cast and crew of Pure Shit and that was filmed as well and presented on the DVD box set.
Mm.
And it's a brilliant box set that only 500 copies were made,
Mm.
and and so it's really not available anywhere at the moment. It's on the the black market almost, for 100, $150. Um, hey Bob, where do the rights of Pure Shit lay at the moment if someone wanted to do a new DVD or anything like that?
They come to talk to me.
Okay, so really you've got, because I asked Bert, he wasn't sure, what was going on, and I think he intimated that maybe he held the rights, especially for that DVD release. But yeah, that's fantastic. I just wanted to ask you also, Bob, the print we have at the moment, it's actually like standard definition. The archive, when it did its transfer in 2009, or maybe a couple of years before that, it didn't do it in high def. I think high def still hadn't been like a form used. People weren't really kind of doing it just yet. Does the neg, does the original neg, like the AB rolls of the neg exist?
If it does, that's at the archive.
And I
Um,
hope that gets a high def treatment
yeah, yeah.
sometime.
I
Mm.
don't understand why, but Andrew Pike from Ronin Films,
Mm,
he's been my distributor for Women of the Sun, and SBS for some reason have been showing a really crappy tape of it, um,
mm,
noisy and horrible.
okay. Mm,
So Andrew and I talked about it, and we went to the archive and said, "Can we get access to?" Well, I've got permission for it anyway. We'd like to make an internet from your AMB
mm,
roll so that we
yes.
can do a high definition test. And we did the
Yep.
test, and it came up really well. So we're in the process of now doing the whole 4 hours.
Great. Great. This is what, needs to happen. This is
Mm.
what restorations mean these days to get
Well,
that high
there
def
was a
quality.
there was a time when the film archive would do it themselves, but then when Morrison and Co. slashed their budgets,
Yes. Mm,
they couldn't do it anymore.
that's right. Yep.
Mm. That's
Hopefully, after May the 2nd, we can go back to, a real world.
Mm,
okay. Well, let's hope. We need more Australian films like Pure Shit restored,
Yeah,
so that they can achieve audiences and new audiences. I mean, 50 years old, the film. It's incredible.
yeah.
mm,
Albo's already come out with a policy for protecting or encouraging streaming of Australian films and documentaries.
Mm.
Okay, good.
That
Yeah,
that would be great. Well, look, congratulations on the screening at Unknown Pleasures on Tuesday,
thank
April
you. Thank
15th.
you.
Um, uh, uh, Bill, just give us the details of what time, location, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, so it's at the Thornbury Picture House on Tuesday coming April 15 at 8:15. and there's still tickets available. It's a 60-seat cinema. There's still about 20 tickets available. So people can just go to the website of the cinema and there's a ticket page there, a booking page there, and just kind of lock your ticket in. It's I'm also doing a screening in Adelaide actually of Pure Shit on April 26th. So I guess I can plug that
Sure.
if anyone in Adelaide is viewing this or listening. Yeah, April 26th. Just Google it and it'll come up, hopefully, under Pure.
Has Sydney been done already?
No, no, I've got no real kind of connection with Sydney, so.
No.
Yeah, because I live in Adelaide as well, it's easy for me to organise things here and rally people to go see it. And Melbourne is where I'm from, and I know that intimately. Sydney's a bit different. The cinemas like the Ritz, just they charge a bit too much for the cinema hire. I suppose I could have tried to ask them to, put it on themselves with a box office split kind of thing. Maybe I can still do that. Yeah. Mm.
Well, I was thinking too about the Sydney Underground Film Festival, because the Pure Shit
Yeah,
could be a real highlight.
yeah, yeah. I think they're in September each year. I'll have a word to them. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
worthwhile. Okay, I think we'll draw to a close because there's so much more to discuss, but we'll leave that now to the screening on Tuesday at Unknown Pleasures, and we'll be speaking to the producer of Pure Shit, Bob Weis, and the co-curator of Unknown Pleasures, Bill Mousoulis. Bob and Bill, thank you so much for talking with me.
That's all right.
Thank, thank you, Peter.
Uh,
Bye bye.
Peter, I thought you wanted to ask me about
Yeah,
films that I thought were worth looking at now.
uh,
I,
I'm very happy
I,
to
I,
go for
I,
it.
wa- I was thinking about this, Peter. Yeah.
Yes, no, go for it, please.
Yeah.
All right. Well, A Complete Unknown with Timothy Chalamet was really badly treated at the Academies. For me, that was the film that I saw last year that was just fantastic.
Uh-huh.
Uh, Disclaimer, which is a streaming thing with Kevin Kline and Kate Blanchett, misunderstood broadly, but was just amazing.
Uh-huh.
And then some of my old favorites, Rashomon, Throne of Blood, Tampopo. You know that film, Tampopo?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Just a fantastic. I've watched it with friends, various different friends, maybe three times this year.
All right.
Uh,
Mm.
and one I really want to see that my girlfriend recommends is The Brutalist.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. It's pretty
Yes,
good. Yeah.
it is very good. Yeah, yeah. And you might
Brody
want,
is it?
yep,
Yeah.
go on. No, no, go on.
No, isn't it Brody, the actor in it?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
Adrian Brody, that's right. Exactly. He won the Best Actor Oscar. Yeah,
And
yeah.
Peter, what were you going to recommend?
Well, you might want to see Anora, the film that actually ended up winning Best Film.
Yeah, that's on my list too.
Yeah, yeah. So, but I agree with you about A Complete Unknown. I think that was
Oh,
overlooked.
yeah,
Yeah.
and what performances in
Yes,
it, and the
yes,
masterful direction. I mean, Shyamalan and the rest of the cast sang and played all the songs.
yes,
And
Yeah.
what about the
Yeah.
guy who played Johnny Cash? He was incredible.
yes. I
Just
agree.
burst through the screen. I mean,
Yep.
you know,
An
I'm going to see
underrated
it
film.
again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fully agree. All right. Bill, do you want to mention a film quickly?
Actually, like the film Anora, the director Sean Baker,
Yep.
I haven't seen Anora, but I saw one of his previous films called The Florida Project from
Yes.
2017. Saw it last night at Thornbury Picture House, and that's amazing.
Mm.
It's very much realist. It like sets up a world and it doesn't have much narrative, or seemingly doesn't have much narrative to it, which I always find a bit of a joy when there's no like, hero with a goal and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I was pleased by that film last night. Mm.
Okay. Excellent stuff. Good to hear that additional commentary about films worth seeing. My Zoom is about to run out. Bob Weis and Bill Mousoulis, thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you, Peter. Yep.
Efkaristo.
Ευχαριστώ. Yep.
Efkaristo.
And now for the
Okay, I'll see you
subtitled
on
interview.
Tuesday.
Okay.
Okay,
See you both later.
See
thanks.
ya. Yep.
Thanks, guys.